Hugo Turner is an independent researcher. He blogs at anti-imperialistu.blogspot.com. It's anti-imperialist-u like university.blogspot.com. He can be found on Twitter at Hugo Turner 1969 and on Facebook. And his articles can be found on globalresearch.ca. Thanks for talking today.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Before we start, we had some sad news today with the death of journalist Robert Perry of Consortium News. I know he was a hero of yours as a journalist and researcher. Do you want to say a few words about him?
Yes, Robert Perry was one of the only journalists with any integrity. He long before Gary Webb exposed the Contra drug connection, Robert Perry had exposed it earlier in the 1980s, and he also worked to expose the October Surprise, which was a plot by Bush to keep American hostages in Iran until the Reagan inauguration. And then more recently, he was one of the only ones that exposed the fascist coup in Ukraine and who was willing to write honestly about what was going on in Syria. So he was one of the only journalists with integrity in the world. There's only a couple, so it's a huge loss. And also, it's very he definitely wouldn't want people to make a conspiracy theory about his death, but he was the second person who is an enemy of the CIA who's had a stroke in recent months, because earlier this year David Talbot also had a stroke. So it's very sort of suspicious, but he would really want people to speculate.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, that was kind of a shock because he had that small stroke and it sounded like he was doing okay, but then that was it. So that's a big loss. And it's important that we talk about him because today we're going to talk about Iran-Contra. But the lead into it was there were these recent reports, probably a couple months back. They appeared first in the Intercept, but they were in all the major media outlets. The report was about Blackwater's infamous CEO Erik Prince and a little throwback from the Iran-Contra days, Oliver North, pitching a proposal to the Trump administration where they offered to create a new, completely privatized intelligence network to operate outside the CIA. This thing would be answerable only to the head of the CIA and to Donald Trump. It would be funded by Trump's donors. And so obviously all of this recalls the events of Iran-Contra, where the private aid network was set up and the off-the-shelf enterprise was formed to pursue this illegal foreign policy with no accountability or oversight. And as we'll find out from Hugo, who studied this, this, of course, kind of devolved into for-profit arms sales, money laundering, death squad activities, and drug running, all under the watchful eye of officials in the U.S. What were your thoughts when you saw these reports come out?
Well, obviously, my first thought was just laughing that it's they're gonna put Oliver North, who is involved in infamous for being involved in drug trafficking. Although, of course, most of the media won't even mention that fact. And then they're gonna put him in charge of the number one source of heroin in the world, Afghanistan, which is only the number one source of heroin because of the CIA secret war there. Before the CIA moved in, they had a 0% share of the heroin trade. Today it has a 96% share of the heroin trade. And really they just moved it there after they lost in Vietnam. They moved the heroin from Southeast Asia to there. And as I talk about my Iran-Contra article, the players in Iran-Contra all had worked in these covert drug-funded wars for decades before the Iran-Contra scandal broke. So I think even Oliver North was often laughed. But there are even more infamous people of course, Theodore Shackley and John Singlaub and all these characters that have been, haunting American history for the past decades.
Right, right.
And of course, using mercenary firms is pretty much standard CIA procedure. Before the CIA was authorized and the OSS was closed down in that gap, William Donovan had started a privatized CIA to keep the OSS things moving in between. And of course, all through its history, the CIA always uses these fronts and mercenary firms. The most famous is Air America, Southern Air Transport, which were these mercenary flying things where and they would fly weapons into places and fly drugs out, and so this is pretty much standard procedure. It's not a new phenomenon. These privatized intelligence and analysts have been around since like the beginning of the Cold War, and they're like a multi-billion-dollar industry. But obviously, this is like Oliver North and Erik Prince see an opportunity to get rich, and Trump's paranoid, and I'm sure he'd love to have his own private CIA that's answerable only to him with like what's going on with Russiagate. So they're trying to get him to give him control of the whole global heroin trade, because and Trump, of course, himself is famous as a money launderer for the mafia, and is friends with all sorts of unsavory characters. So yes, it's very much like reminiscent of the Reagan era, where back then you had a B-movie actor who was elected president. Today we have a reality television president, and the corruption, the CIA unaccountability, and just everything is just pretty much the same as it always has been. With the drugs are flowing, the money, people are getting rich.
Yeah, no, it's true. That's what's so interesting about it. I found that we'll talk about Oliver North's role kind of at the center of the scandal. Was he, what was his role in
He did play. I like to poo-poo him a little, but he did play. He was sort of like a middle manager. He was John Stockwell compared it to his role in Angola. But Oliver North was not at the top of the pyramid. It was George Bush and Theodore Shackley. But Oliver North did have an important role in the '80s. Like some of the highlights of his career, where he went like before the Iran-Contra scandal even started, he was found running around naked, waving a gun around.
Wait, what is that story? I don't know that story.
I think that was some kind of result of his post-traumatic stress from the Vietnam War. And he was teaching a class, and he like set off this like grenade or blanks or something. I don't know. But basically, he acted like really kind of crazy in his class, and either like shot off some blanks in the classroom and or a fake grenade or something. And that was another scandal he was involved in. But during the Iraq, he was actually way more important than people thought. Like he knew about the stealth bomber program in the '70s, like long before people knew it. Like in the '80s, they were pretending they were still working on it, but like they already had these stealth bombers, and he knew about that. And basically, according to Doug Valentine, Oliver North was William Casey's man on the National Security Council, so he was basically like a CIA pawn, and that. But he became famous during the Iran-Contra scandal because he wanted to take the credit, and he had hoped that it would launch his political career. And he actually was close to being elected a senator in Virginia, but this tape emerged with him being like super racist and homophobic and telling these crazy jokes for like an hour, and it ruined his campaign. So he became a Fox News commentator. But he also has like a private security firms and stuff like that. I believe he was selling bulletproof jackets and stuff like that. During the Iran-Contra scandal, of course, he coordinated with the drug dealing Contras. He personally supervised the hit squad that killed Barry Seal. He was a character in a recent movie that I haven't seen yet with like Tom Cruise, played Barry Seal. Oliver North was the guy who was there, and George Bush, the vice president at the time, was of course the one that ordered it because he was friends with Barry Seal, and Barry Seal was having legal trouble, and he like yelled at Bush that you better get me out of this, or I'm going to tell what's going on with the Iran-Contra affair. And he was dead within like 2 weeks at the hands of a Colombian hit squad armed with like MAC-10 machine guns, I believe. And let's see, Oliver North also supervised this. He was appointed in charge of the terrorism during the Reagan administration. He ran this hit squad of like basically this death squad in the Middle East that would kidnap people to help with like the negotiations with the Iranians. Like they would kidnap Iranians to be like trade. It wasn't just arms for hostages; it was like hostages for hostages, and also like to an assassination program or whatever to kill our enemies in like the Lebanese civil war. Like they attempted to kill the then leader of Hezbollah, but instead killed like 100 people that were just like in the neighborhood, and like wounded like 260 people. I think they killed 92 people and wounded like 259 or something like that. So he's definitely one of these operatives. But he received fame because, he wanted to take credit for it. He wanted to take the blame. He knew that the American there's a section of the American public that just will love any type of fascist, no matter, as long as they're like open and honest and just like, yes, I did it. I'm not ashamed of it, and I loved it, and I'm proud of what I did. And he became a hero basically to right wingers after the Iran-Contra hearings, and he took the blame away from Shackley,
Right.
Bush, and all these other people. It was sort of like became this just Oliver North, this rogue operation.
Well, that's one thing that was interesting in here was, Erik Prince had already revealed that he wanted to, I guess he was talking with Steve Bannon, but he suggested the creation of something akin to the CIA's Phoenix program, which was, of course, an assassination program.
Which is, of course, a joke because, I mean, it's as if they need to recreate it, like it never stopped. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like that's a major part of Iran-Contra is like the Phoenix program moved to Central America, as Doug Valentine talks about in his book, and that's just pretty much standard. It's not like some scandal. That's just how they do things. They torture people. They assassinate people. They get names. They find more people to torture and to kill. That's just like that's how they work.
Right.
And that's all the Phoenix program really is. Of course, I mean, if they've been paying attention for the past 16 years of the war on terror, these things aren't even secret anymore. They make TV shows about it. It's like, hooray, we assassinate people, we torture people. I mean, the days when this was like a secret are long gone.
Right, right. I guess, yeah, the only difference being this would be a completely private operation without any.
Yeah, this would be run to benefit Trump's like mafia backers, and I can only imagine where and it would just be like this huge money laundering thing. Basically, Erik Prince, got super rich because with the Iraq War, it's like, why not pay these people directly? Like, have all these contractors, and they can steal like trillions of dollars. And basically, he's stolen all this money from America, and now he wants to steal even more money for stuff that, like, he ran Blackwater. Every time they drove through Baghdad, they just fired at everybody that was around. Their idea was the Iraqis should just just run away whenever Blackwater was coming through. That was their idea of security. And they got caught at it one time, and then it burst. They did that every time. But that was the scandal. That was why they had to change their name. Although everyone still calls it Blackwater because they can't keep track of the different names that they've adopted since then, like Z and stuff like that. And then he opened this huge base in the United Arab Emirates, and I think it's almost certainly, like, we know for a fact he's funneling mercenaries into like the horrible war on Yemen, where like 1 million people are starving, and just, especially like I think like 500,000 children may have died already. And I believe that the Blackwater is probably involved in trading Al Qaeda terrorists in the region, and not just in Yemen. But I haven't heard that. But I mean, he opened this huge mercenary base in the United Arab Emirates like all these years ago, and of course they're going to use it. Of course, there's like mercenaries involved in these terrorist groups. I mean, these terrorist groups are mercenaries. They get paid. They're basically like these paid warlords.
Yeah, and that's the UAE is one of the big countries where all of this.
Yeah, one of the major supporters, one of the major allies of Saudi
Right.
Arabia.
Can you talk? One of the things I found interesting was the fact that this would be funded by some of Trump's donors, and I remember one of the people testifying in front of the Iran-Contra hearings was the guy who owned Coors Brewing Company. I don't know his name, but it's obviously the Adolf Coors is the company. Do you want to talk about some of that private funding that went into? How did they form this private aid network during that era, and who were some of the people funding it outside of the drug traffickers?
Well, that's an absolutely fascinating topic because Coors is like typifies this kind of fascist American funder of these like far right causes that like totally came to power during the Reagan administration. I mean, he was like one of Reagan's personal advisors. They opposed rights for women. They wanted to roll back the civil rights thing. He wanted a white only workplace for his company. They opposed divorce. They opposed gays, and they also what they supported was fascism all over the planet. And so one of their major causes was to support the fascist governments in El Salvador and Guatemala while they were killing tens of thousands of people and torturing them and murdering them, and to support the Contras. And they were like working closely with the CIA. And these billionaires, some of them are very, they're interlocked with the CIA practically. And with the Corps is like a very infamous example of this. I wrote it up. This network it was also part of a global network of fascists, like part of the WACL, which was the World Anti-Communist League, which combined these escaped Ukrainian fascists and German fascists and Italian, all the fascists of Europe that escaped after the war, and the CIA put to work for them. They joined this WACL thing. In Asia, there was the Taiwanese, who were like the major drug traffickers of that time or whatever. That's where it all started, was with the KMT, even before World War II. And then the Corps network was very much a part of the WACL network, and they were like supporting the apartheid regime in South Africa. They were supporting, the war in Central America. They were supporting the war in Afghanistan. They lobbied for an aggressive CIA foreign policy, and pretty much it's indistinguishable from the CIA. And it was like all these people from the CIA were working in these different think tanks that the Corps family was funding. And it's similar today with Soros, or even before Corps, it was like the Rockefellers. They were like so interlinked with the CIA. But there's like a bunch of these people. Omidyar, the owner of the Intercept, is one of these people. He was exposed as being deeply involved in the fascist coup in Ukraine.
Right.
And I believe his family's actually Iranian and is probably like I think has some relation to the Savak or something. So it's like the story of these fascist exiles continues, and the Intercept is like just a part of that, not some kind of fight against the man thing as they portray themselves to be. But yeah, these donors, they are the ones that like purged Congress of all the people that had opposed the CIA during the 70s, like Church, the Clark, all these people, even the people that like were like calling children at Iran-Contra hearings, they got rid of all those people afterwards. So it's like American politics is very much controlled by this, or has been very influenced by this fascist network, as has been documented in Russ Bellant's two books, The Coors Connection and Old Nazis New Right. Old Nazis New Right's even more scandalous because it's about all the Nazi war criminals that settled in America that became part of the Republican Party.
Right. Talk some about. That's an interesting book. You want to just talk a little bit about that to kind of give some of the background of the people around Reagan's rise?
Well, yeah.
I assume that's what that book is about.
Well, yeah. These fascist immigrants after World War II, they had to flee their homes because otherwise they would be like put on trial in the communist countries for like the war crimes that they carried out. The genocide, the 27 million people they murdered in the Soviet Union, the 4 million people they murdered in Poland, the 6 million Jews they murdered. So, but the CIA, of course, saw these people as super useful, so they hired them all, and like the lucky ones got to settle in America. And instead of keeping a low profile, they were actually put in charge of their ethnic communities and became like these Republican fundraisers. It was called the Republican Heritage Ethnic Outreach Program. So you've got these Ukrainian fascists, you've got these Croatian fascists. These are the people that, and while Reagan back then became the figurehead for this huge, massive CIA propaganda campaign called the Crusade for Freedom, and who were the people involved in that? The exact same people, these fascist immigrants who, were pretending to be like they opposed the Soviet Union because of, they were for freedom, when they weren't really for freedom because they were like all fascists who, had staged a violent occupation and murdered and tortured all these people, which is what made them useful to the CIA because, that's what the CIA does. And you've got experienced people experienced in murder, torture, and propaganda. They're going to put those people to work. A lot of these people went to work for Radio Free Europe. And so even today, that's like this massive CIA propaganda campaign. They actually employed all these people. And these people also became backers. Oh, anyways, Reagan met them through he was the figurehead for the Crusade for Freedom. He was their spokesperson because he was a B Hollywood actor. And he was involved with these far-right California Republicans, these fascist people that later became part of his kitchen cabinet. So from the start, they had backed his career. And when Reagan was actually elected, another part of it was this fundraising of this like fascist network. Like they went down to Guatemala and they got these Guatemalan oligarchs to make all these illegal campaign contributions to the Reagan campaign. And then they went to El Salvador, and then they also, on the same trip, visited the Contras, and they're like, get ready, Reagan's coming in. We're gonna really unleash you guys. Reagan's campaign was a culmination of basically this fascist lobby groups within America and around the world too, like Michael.
So one of the things in here that is very interesting is the fact that Prince offers all of these. He says they're all foreign nationals, so they can be very deniable for whatever they do, whether it's the assassinations or whatever they might do, or the spying. How did they manage to keep Iran-Contra secret for so long? Because this was something that the Congress, of course, it was illegal to send weapons to Iran, and there was a whole amendment that had been pushed through Congress to say you are not supposed to deliver any arms to the Contra. So how did they keep it secret for so long?
Well, they didn't keep it secret. Basically, it was just like they were like cut off all aid, but noted that observers were like, well, it doesn't seem like the Contras have their aid hasn't dropped off. That's like they didn't want to investigate it. They didn't want to know. It's easy to keep secrets, but people don't want to know things. Basically, that's what happened. It was exposed because the Nicaraguans shot down a plane over the country. I mean, Robert Perry wanted to expose it, and like maybe a couple of troublemakers, opportunists like Kerry saw a way to like he could pretend that he was like a crusader against these forces that I'm sure even then he was working for. And that's actually probably why he was picked, because he could be trusted to cover it up. And he even admitted that his role was to keep the CIA out of his Kerry committee hearings, and just to talk about like the network of ex-CIA people. That's actually why Sheehan concentrated on all the people that were ex-CIA, because he knew that the CIA people were totally above the law, and there was totally hopeless after them. So he thought maybe at least the people that were officially ex-CIA could be prosecuted as like an organized crime group because they were dealing in guns and drugs and committing false flag terror attacks and carrying out illegal war that Congress said they couldn't do.
Right.
So yeah, they didn't want to prosecute it. They totally failed to. At the time, they were like, there were people, the critics were saying, if you do not get the CIA under control, this kind of thing is going to end up in a huge bloodbath. And then, it's like, no, we don't want to do that. Let's just move on. It's just like how Obama was like, no, we don't want to investigate anything the CIA did regarding torture. Let's just move on. That was very much the Clinton attitude when they came into power. And then, so of course, what happened was 9/11, basically. And this drug dealing CIA-backed network attacked America. Thousands of people died. But that was very good for the CIA because, funding went through the roof. Suddenly, their power increased. They're more unaccountable than ever.
Right. Basically, all the brakes were taken off, so to speak. To talk about some of these ex-CIA guys, you wrote a long article about Theodore Shackley, and there's a lot of ex-CIA guys involved in this new proposal from Erik Prince.
Well, yeah, of course, let's address this ex-CIA thing. They're not going to be independent of the CIA. These people they're still the CIA.
Right.
Being ex-CIA makes them even more CIA because they're just even more deniable and secret assets of the CIA. Shackley was still a manager in the CIA, basically. But yes, Theodore Shackley is I wrote an article on him because he just typified the secret history of America, where his first assignment was to work with the Nazis that they were recruiting in Germany. Then his next assignment was to manage the covert war on Cuba after the Bay of Pigs thing. Then he was sent to Laos to build up this heroin-funded secret army to wage the secret war there. Then he was sent to Vietnam to direct the CIA base there during the Phoenix program. Then he organized the coup in Chile against Allende. So it's just this one guy's career just exposes so much of how the American empire operates. So I wrote this long article about him. He's a fascinating character, and he was close friends with Vice President George Bush, and became one of his speechwriters during the Bush administration. And he was he got supposedly fired during the Carter administration, and so he was part of that network that got Reagan in, because there's not just these fascists, but these pissed off CIA guys against Carter, and they formed the CIA agents for Bush. But then when he lost the primary, they backed the Reagan campaign, and of course Reagan also had his own personal guy, Casey, formerly of the OSS, who was his campaign manager, then was appointed director of the CIA.
Okay, so yeah, so talk about Shackley's role in Iran-Contra.
Shackley was very much a central figure in Iran-Contra because he is the one who gave them, he played a role in giving them the idea to do this hostage deal to sell weapons to Iran to get hostages released, basically through there's this Israeli intelligence operation, basically, and Michael Deaver was part of it, and I mean not Michael Deaver,
Oh, Ladine?
Michael Ladine, yeah, Michael Ladine. And basically, Israel had been selling Iran these weapons because their strategy was to make the Iran and Iraq war as bloody as possible. Plus, like, Iran used to be their ally because they had always reached out to the non-Arab peoples because they were like scared of pan-Arabism. So they like worked with the Kurds and they worked with the Shah, and they had actually helped train the Savak as well. So he played a role there, and then of course all the with the drugs in Central America, he played a huge role because it was his former people. Like Donald Gregg was the one managing it for the White House. He was under Shackley in Vietnam. Felix Rodriguez was in El Salvador. He had served under Donald Gregg and had and he'd known Shackley since the Miami days, of course. And and they were all friends with George H.W. Bush. They were close, and so it was Shackley's network, basically, that was the whole secret team that Sheehan was trying to uncover and that Congress didn't want to talk about at all. And the CIA claims that Shackley was an innocent victim that was falsely accused of involvement in the Iran-Contra affair, despite the fact that he had been, in Miami, he was working with these Cuban drug-dealing exiles. Then he goes to Laos, he's working with this heroin-funded secret army. He goes to Vietnam, he's working with their drug-funded government of South Vietnam, and then it just goes on and on. And the Shackley Network had also organized the Bolivian cocaine coup that actually fueled the rise of the Medellin cartel in Colombia, which is Hollywood loves to make Pablo Escobar seem like he's just like this outlaw that but he wouldn't have risen to power without the CIA. And of course, later they decided to kill him because he knew too much and because it would make Bush look tough.
Right, the same thing that happened to Noriega, basically.
Yep, another close friend, another close member of this network.
So that's what's interesting here is kind of this whole thing had spiraled out of control and turned into a drug running and money laundering operation.
It wasn't so much out of control though, because it was just always going on. That's just how our society works. It's based on these huge profits from the drugs are the only thing keeping our banks from collapsing.
Right.
It's all like, I mean, the money laundering. It's like the banks, these Citigroup. It's like all these famous, seemingly respectable banks. If you look at these different scandals, they're all named in this. Like it's what Riggs Bank, Wells Fargo, Citibank. So I mean, this goes to the top. This is about like, I mean, you watch these old movies made in the 30s. It's like the mayor's in league with the mafia, and people think that's something that happened in the past. That's just like the reality of like what goes on. I mean, if you look at like how the drugs are actually smuggled into Florida today, it's absurd. They're legally allowed to just rent out planes without any kind of. I mean, it's basically set up so that you can own these airplane shell companies and smuggle drugs in with impunity, and like they never get busted because they have political connections. So that's just like it's illegal political money that funds our corrupt system. We live in we are the biggest narco country in the world. It's not like just Colombia. It's not just Mexico. It's America.
Right.
As I was saying, like this drug money is what funded Reagan. It was like he was funded by the Korean lobby, the Taiwan lobby, which were both deeply involved. in drug trafficking for decades. Like the Moonies are like the Korean example, where this cult leader is backed by the Korean CIA, and the CIA and his group is used to like buy all this. They own the Washington Times, and like they were implicated in the Bolivian cocaine coup. They're backed by like these notorious heroin smuggling Yakuza members. And it's just like it's all been exposed. It's just like it just goes on, and people just pretend it didn't happen. And we get to where we are today, the society where it's just sort of like Americans have absolutely no idea what is going on in the world. They live in this complete gray world where they think we're the good guys. It's just like insanity.
Yeah, no, definitely. So tell us, is there anything?
Wait, yeah.
Do you have anything that you've written recently that you want to talk about?
I did want to. I think we were cut off before. I just want to say it yet again. Yes, obviously this is just an attempt by Erik Prince and Albert North to be gifted the entire control of the entire world heroin supply in exchange for protecting Donald Trump. And of course, this won't be a scandal. They'll just continue looking to see if, like, some Trump campaign person talked to a Russian.
Right, that's the scandal, right? Do you have anything else that you've written recently that you want to talk about or anything?
I did I did a series of interviews with my friend at Internationalist 360 called the Underground Reich, and I went through sort of like the CIA relationship with Nazis and his relation to Al Qaeda with like fascism and the Muslim Brotherhood and things like that I could plug. And I also wrote, of course, an article about the Coors family and the old Nazis in the New Right. That was the last thing I wrote before taking a break.
Oh, okay, great. Well, I'll put links to those things, and I'll put links to those things, and yeah, no, thanks for talking. I think it's interesting to get a look at how the same things happen.
Oh yeah, because it's like it's not like it's just like this is the system. That's the whole point, is to like be an empire that like is just constantly looting and murdering and torturing people all over the planet.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's not being fixed because it's not meant to be fixed.
Yeah, it's not out of control. It's just like how things work. And then of course we have the media to give us the opposite view of the world, so that we'll be able to sleep at night. God bless America.
Exactly.
This is Our Hidden History